He was the ghost of Sparta, a name whispered in fear across the sun-baked lands of ancient Greece. A Spartan captain, yes, a formidable warrior, absolutely. But in one horrific, blood-soaked night, he transformed into something far more terrifying, something utterly consumed. A father who murdered his own daughter and wife. Can you even imagine that? The very thought curdles the blood. And here's the kicker. Kratos didn't swing the blade by choice. Oh no, this wasn't some tragic accident or a momentary lapse of judgment. This was a deliberate, calculated act of cruelty orchestrated by none other than Ares, the god of war himself. He choreographed the slaughter, twisting Kratos' strength into a weapon against his own beloved family. So, what do you do when the gods, the very beings you're supposed to revere, the ones who hold your fate in their hands, decide to set you up? When they manipulate you, break you, and then laugh at your torment, you don't just roll over. You don't just accept your fate. No, if you're Kratos, you load the one weapon, the mythical, impossible weapon that can actually kill a god. And then, with nothing left to lose, you march straight into Olympus's gilded backyard, ready to tear it all down. This isn't just a story. It's the moment-by-moment breakdown of how Kratos the broken Spartan defied the divine-killed Ares, and took a revenge so monumentally huge, so utterly cataclysmic, that it literally shook the very foundations of Mount Olympus and left an indelible mark on the pantheon forever. Get ready, because this is going to be a wild ride. Let's rewind a bit, shall we? Before the ash, before the rage, Kratos was just a man. A Spartan? Yes, a brutal warrior, but still a man. And like any man, he had his limits. We find him on a battlefield, a sea of blood and broken bodies, his own life ebbing away. He was bleeding out, surrounded by a barbarian horde that seemed endless, their blades glinting in the dying light. It was a losing fight, a desperate, hopeless last stand. That's when he shouted it, that desperate, raw vow that every soldier, every person facing annihilation, screams when death is the only alternative. I will serve you, just let me live. A plea, a bargain, a last-ditch effort to cling to existence. And Ares answered. Oh, he answered all right. The sky didn't just part. It tore open, a violent rift of divine power. Ares descended, not with grace, but with the terrifying majesty of a storm. He was a whirlwind of destruction, obliterating the barbarian horde in a flash of divine fury. One moment, Kratos was facing certain death. The next, his enemies were nothing but scattered dust. The god of war had arrived, and he hadn't come empty-handed. He branded Kratos, literally, physically, with the blades of chaos. Imagine it. Searing steel, hot enough to melt flesh, bursting from Kratos' forearms, chains fused to his very bones, ready to sprout into lethal extensions. The pain must have been unimaginable, but with it, power, raw, untamed, destructive power, rushed through the Spartan. Kratos felt invincible, a god among mortals, but there's always fine print, isn't there? Especially when you're dealing with a god known for his cruelty. The fine print here was brutal, unforgiving, total obedience, forever. Kratos had sworn his life, and Ares had taken it, twisting his purpose. From that moment on, Kratos became Ares' personal attack dog, a living weapon unleashed upon the world. He burned villages, toppled ancient temples, and carved a blood-red path of destruction across Greece, all at the command of his new master. He was a terror, a legend whispered in hushed tones, the ghost of Sparta, now truly a ghost of his former self, hollowed out by endless slaughter. His final errand, the one that would break him completely, seemed simple enough: level a small, unassuming temple in Athens. Kratos, hardened by years of unquestioning obedience, kicked in the doors, his blades of chaos a blur of motion. He slaughtered the defenders, their lives meaningless in his rampage. But then, As the last body hit the floor, as the echoes of his brutality faded, a chilling silence descended. And in that silence, Kratos finally realized the truth. A truth so horrifying, so utterly soul-shattering, that it would forever define him. Inside that temple, cowering in fear, were his wife, Lysandra, and his daughter, Calliope. Ares' logic, if you can even call it that, was cold, calculated, and utterly devoid of humanity. He wanted to strip Kratos of every human tether, every ounce of compassion, every connection that made him mortal. He wanted to mold the perfect warrior, a being of pure, unadulterated rage. But instead, Ares didn't just forge a warrior. He forged a ghost, a living nightmare haunted by the ash-white skin that forever marked him. The cursed reminder of his family's burned remains fused to his flesh. That night, Kratos screamed. He screamed so loudly, so profoundly, that even the searing, ever-present blades of chaos, those extensions of Ares' will, went quiet, their infernal fire momentarily extinguished by the sheer, unadulterated agony of a broken man. It was the birth of true vengeance. So, here Kratos was, a man utterly broken, cursed, and haunted. His family gone, his soul scarred beyond repair. What was left? Suicide, you might think, would be the natural, merciful escape. But even that was denied to him. The gods, in their infinite cruelty, refused him death. They wouldn't even grant him the peace of oblivion. His suffering was too entertaining, too poetic, perhaps, for their callous sensibilities. So, with no escape, no peace, Kratos did the only thing left for a man with nothing but vengeance coursing through his veins. He swore revenge. Not against some mortal king or a rival army, but against the very being who had given him power, the one who had orchestrated his torment, Ares himself. Now that's a problem, isn't it? A colossal, insurmountable problem. Mortals, even legendary Spartan warriors, don't kill gods. It's just not how things work in the cosmic order. You can fight them, you can annoy them, you can even wound them, but kill them? That's unheard of. Propaganda, perhaps, can kill gods in the minds of men, erode their worship, but a physical death. No, unless there was a way. And rumor, that fickle whisper of hope, spoke of just such a thing. Pandora's box. Not just any box, mind you, but a weapon so potent, so overflowing with ancient power, that it could level the playing field, making a mortal capable of challenging the divine. But naturally, nothing this powerful is ever easy to get your hands on. The box wasn't sitting on a shelf in some dusty old library. Oh no, it sat locked away, hidden deep within the treacherous expanse of the desert of lost souls. And to make matters worse, it wasn't just lying around. It was strapped to the back of the Titan Kratos, a colossal, ancient being imprisoned, and left to roam a labyrinthine maze that had chewed up entire armies, swallowed them whole, never to be seen again. Just getting to Kronos was a death sentence. Kratos, however, wasn't deterred. He was beyond deterrence. He hunted down ancient seers, those cryptic mystics who saw glimpses of the future. He threatened muses, divine beings of inspiration, extracting every scrap of information he could. He learned the awful price, the true cost of reaching that box. To even approach it, he would have to plunge into the underworld, brave its horrors, rip out his own memories, the very essence of his identity, the pain that fueled him, and somehow against all odds climb back out. It was a journey into absolute madness, a descent into the deepest parts of cosmic horror. But Kratos, ever the pragmatist when faced with the impossible, just shrugged, a grim determination hardening his eyes, and said, "Then I'll come back dripping." A promise and a threat, all rolled into one. He wasn't just going to survive. He was going to emerge, drenched in the essence of the underworld, ready for war. His first stop on this impossible quest? Athens, not the bustling, glorious city of philosophy and art, but Athens under siege. Ares, in his boundless cruelty, was actively destroying the city, a brutal display of his power and Kratos' unleashed rage. The city's patron goddess, Athena, a deity usually bound by strict divine protocols, broke rank. She couldn't openly defy Ares, but she could whisper, and she did. She appeared before Kratos, a beacon of ethereal light amidst the chaos, and offered him a deal. "Serve us," she intoned, her voice echoing with ancient power, "and we will free you of your nightmares." The translation was clear, wasn't it? Help us do what we can't or won't do ourselves. Use your rage, your power, to take down our mad dog, Ares, and in return, perhaps, a sliver of peace for your tormented soul. The other gods were too proud, too fearful, or too indifferent to directly challenge Ares. But Kratos? He was their perfect disposable weapon. He agreed. He had nothing left to lose and everything to gain, or at least the chance to finally end his suffering by ending Ares. Athena pointed him toward the desert, toward the impossible task of Pandora's box. The journey was anything but a leisurely stroll. It was a brutal, relentless gauntlet designed to test his resolve and hone his skills. Along the way, he encountered creatures ripped from the darkest corners of Greek myth. He beheaded a gorgon, its serpentine hair thrashing in its final moments, its petrifying gaze turned to stone. He tamed a harpy not with kindness, but by breaking its wing, then using its powerful talons as grappling hooks, a gruesome but effective means of traversal. Each victory wasn't just a step forward. It was a visceral experience that fed the blades of chaos. With every monster slain, every challenge overcome, the blades seemed to learn new tricks, new ways to inflict pain and destruction. They'd extend with a sickening shink, retract with a whisper of steel, or spin like buzzsaws, tearing through flesh and bone. Kratos was mastering them, becoming one with their destructive power. By the time the desert horizon swallowed the sun, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and crimson, Kratos was no longer just a Spartan warrior. He was a force of nature, a harbinger of death. He could carve a swath through any Olympian monster, any mythical beast, no matter how formidable, if they were dumb enough to stand in front of him. His body was a tapestry of scars, his mind a steel trap of determination, and his blades? They were thirsty for divine blood. The stage was set for the next, most perilous act of his journey. And so, Kratos finally arrived at the Desert of Lost Souls. It wasn't just a desert. It was a wasteland of despair, endless dunes stretching to a hazy horizon, a place where time itself seemed to have forgotten to move. And there, looming against the impossibly vast sky, was Kratos. He wasn't just large. He was a walking mountain, a colossal, ancient titan condemned to forever wander this desolate expanse. His massive form a testament to the gods' brutal justice. Pandora's box, the very object of Kratos' desperate quest, was chained to his back, a tiny speck against the titan's gargantuan form. The sheer scale of it all was enough to crush the spirit of any lesser man. But Kratos was not a lesser man. He was fueled by an unquenchable fire of revenge. He didn't hesitate. With a guttural roar, he leapt, driving the blades of chaos deep into Kronos' living stone flesh. The titan roared in pain, a sound like grinding mountains, but Kratos clung on, beginning the arduous, terrifying climb. Up he went, scaling the titan's back, a tiny, defiant figure against an impossible backdrop. Harpies, those winged nightmares, constantly pecked at his shoulders, attempting to dislodge him, their sharp talons tearing at his flesh. The air was thin, the grip precarious, but Kratos pushed on, every muscle screaming, every nerve alight. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he reached the chamber where Pandora's box was secured. He expected glory, perhaps a divine light, a chorus of angels, some grand revelation befitting such a legendary artifact. Instead, he found an obsidian cube, plain, unassuming, sealed with a single intricate lock. No thunder, no choir. Just an ominous, almost mundane click when he pried it open. It was an anticlimax, almost disappointing, until the true power was unleashed. From within the box, a torrent of ancient, raw power erupted. It wasn't a destructive explosion, but a rush, an infusion. The souls of every slain warrior, every forgotten hero, every ounce of power that had been contained within, surged into him. He felt it, strength beyond mortal comprehension, speed that defied physics, and a sliver, just a tantalizing sliver, of divinity itself. It was intoxicating, overwhelming. For the first time in what felt like forever, Kratos felt a weight settle upon him, a power so immense that it made his guilt, his ever-present companion, feel heavier, more profound. He was no longer just a man. He was something else, something more. Somewhere on Olympus, Ares, the architect of Kratos' misery, sensed the shift. He felt that surge of power, that sudden imbalance in the cosmic scales, and he didn't recoil in fear. No, Ares, ever the twisted connoisseur of combat, chuckled. A deep, resonant sound that echoed across the divine realm. Finally, he muttered, a cruel smile spreading across his face. A worthy opponent. He wasn't just ready for Kratos. He was relishing the thought of their ultimate confrontation. He had created his perfect warrior, and now that warrior was coming for him. Kratos had Pandora's box. He had the power. He was ready, but Ares wasn't going to make it easy. Death, that familiar specter, caught up to Kratos in the most brutal, unexpected way. From Athens, a city now ravaged by his own hand and Ares' fury, the god of war hurled a pillar. Not just any pillar, mind you, but one the size of a trireme, a massive warship, propelled with divine force across the vast expanse of the desert. It was a projectile of pure, unadulterated rage. It skewered Kratos, pinning him to a jagged stone outcrop, a gruesome display of divine power. His heart stopped, his vision blurred. His soul, ripped from his body, descended. The Underworld. It greeted him not with silence, but with the chilling, eternal symphony of suffering. Rivers of blood flowed endlessly, a macabre landscape of despair. And worse, far worse, was the echo. The faint, ghostly echo of his daughter's laughter, a cruel reminder of what he had lost, what he had become. The Underworld wasn't a place of peace. It was a torment designed specifically for him. But Kratos, even in death, refused to be broken. He rejected afterlife hospitality with every fiber of his being. He wasn't going to stay. This wasn't his final destination. He fought through legions of shades, the tormented souls of the damned, their ethereal forms clawing at him, trying to drag him deeper into the abyss. He stole a chunk of the river Lethe, the river of forgetfulness, not to erase his pain, but perhaps to use its power, its essence, for his own ends. And then, defying every law of the dead, he rode a soul elevator, a spectral contraption, back to the surface, back to the land of the living, back to his vengeance. He clawed his way out of his own grave, a literal resurrection, his body battered, but his spirit unbroken. The blades of chaos, those extensions of his will and Ares' curse, reignited, their infernal glow now burning with a new, terrifying intensity. His eyes, once dulled by despair, now glowed with stolen godfire, a testament to the power he had absorbed, the defiance he embodied. Ares had upgraded him again, unwittingly. He had pushed Kratos to the brink of death and beyond, and in doing so, he had unleashed something far more dangerous. This time, the leash was truly off. Kratos was no longer Ares' puppet. He was his undoing. The stage was set for the final cataclysmic confrontation. Athens, already a city in ruins, became the ultimate battleground. Ares, in a colossal astral form, a towering manifestation of divine rage and destruction, loomed over the city. He rained fire, searing flames that consumed buildings in an instant. and spikes of jagged stone, tearing through the ancient architecture like paper. Civilians screamed, their cries echoing through the smoke-filled air as temples crumbled and homes collapsed. And the other gods? Oh, they were there, all right. Watching from the pristine, untouched balconies of Olympus, safe from the carnage, almost as if they were enjoying a spectator sport, popcorn in hand as the mortal world burned. Their indifference was almost as infuriating as Ares's cruelty. Kratos, however, was not just a spectator. He was the main event. He sprinted across the crumbling rooftops, a blur of ash and fury, his eyes fixed on the towering form of Ares. With a leap born of desperation and divine power, he launched himself into Ares's chest, a mortal projectile aimed at the heart of a god. He didn't just hit. He punched straight into the god's ethereal form, into the very beating heart of war itself. The world dissolved. The physical battle faded, replaced by a mindscape, a psychological battlefield where Ares held the advantage. "You're still my monster, Kratos," Ares's voice boomed, echoing in the cavern of Kratos' mind, dripping with twisted pride. He conjured illusions, the ultimate psychological torture. Clones of Calliope and Lysandra, his beloved wife and daughter, appeared before him, perfect, ethereal. But they weren't peaceful memories, they were bait. Ares forced Kratos to defend them against endless waves of phantom enemies, a sick, twisted reversal of that fatal night in the temple. He wanted Kratos to relive his failure, to drown in his guilt, to be consumed by the very trauma that fueled him. But Kratos was beyond that. He had plunged into the underworld, ripped out his memories, and returned. He had faced his demons. He screamed, a primal, guttural roar that tore through the illusion, shaking the very fabric of the mindscape. He yelled the names of his family, not in despair, but in defiance, a declaration of his enduring love and his unyielding purpose. He shattered the illusion, refusing to be manipulated, refusing to be Ares's pawn any longer. And then, with a final decisive surge of power, he planted the blades of chaos, those cursed weapons of Ares, deep into the god of war's skull. The colossal astral form buckled, shrank, and for a single pregnant heartbeat, the entire city of Athens went silent, holding its breath for the inevitable. Ares, now reduced to a man-sized form, battered and weakened, but still radiating a palpable aura of malevolence, lunged. He wielded a hammer, not just any hammer, but one forged from the very cities he had raised, a weapon imbued with the suffering of countless mortals. This was his last, desperate, furious attack. But Kratos, though weary, was still the ghost of Sparta, a warrior refined by unimaginable pain and fueled by an unholy quest for vengeance. He ducked, a blur of motion, narrowly avoiding the crushing blow. In the same fluid movement, he sliced the hamstrings of the god of war, bringing him down to one knee. With a final powerful thrust, Kratos pinned Ares, not with some new, divine weapon, but with the very chains Ares himself had gifted him, the blades of chaos. The irony was palpable, a cruel, poetic justice. The instruments of Kratos' enslavement now became the tools of Ares' downfall. But Kratos wasn't done. He ripped Pandora's box open one last time, drawing upon its remaining dwindling power. He siphoned the last vestiges of godly essence, feeling it course through his veins, transforming him, elevating him. He grew, his form expanding until he stood at equal height with the humbled god of war, a divine reflection of his tormentor. Ares, in a final futile act of defiance, hurled a last desperate fireball, a concentrated blast of pure, destructive energy. Kratos didn't dodge. He absorbed it. He roared, a sound that ripped through the very air, a culmination of all his suffering, all his rage, all his power. And then, with both blades of chaos, glowing with the combined might of Pandora's box and stolen godfire, he drove them simultaneously, brutally, through Ares' chest. The impact was cataclysmic. Lightning cracked across the sky, not just in Athens, but across all of Greece, a cosmic shudder. The heavens themselves seemed to bleed, turning a deep, angry crimson. Ares, the mighty god of war, disintegrated, his form dissolving into a storm of red ash that rained down over Athens, mingling with the dust and debris of his own destruction. It was over, and in that same instant, every single statue of Ares across Greece, from the grandest temple to the humblest shrine, cracked simultaneously, a divine death knell heard echoing on every shoreline, signifying the unthinkable. A god had fallen. The dust settled, the echoes of divine destruction faded, and then, as if on cue, the Olympians appeared. Not to intervene, not to mourn, but to assess the damage, to survey the new cosmic order. Athena, ever the calculating strategist, was front and center, her gaze cool and appraising. True to her word, the ghosts of Kratos' family, the ash-white skin that had haunted him for so long, vanished from his flesh. A physical burden lifted, a curse seemingly broken. But the memories, they remained, intact, vivid, searing. The visions of Lysandra and Calliope, the screams, the guilt, they weren't erased. Vengeance had been delivered, yes, but the nightmares, the profound soul-deep trauma remained. There was no true absolution, no clean slate. The gods, ever pragmatic, had a new problem, a vacant throne. The god of war was dead, so they offered it, the now vacant throne, to Kratos, the very man who had just defied them all, who had murdered one of their own. It was a cynical, opportunistic move, a way to maintain order, to perhaps even control this new, unpredictable force they had unleashed. Kratos, still dripping with Ares' ichor, the very essence of the fallen god, climbed the steps of Olympus. His ascent was not triumphant, but heavy, burdened. He sat on the cold marble seat of the god of war, a throne he never wanted, a title he never sought. Mortals below, unaware of the profound tragedy playing out on Olympus, cheered. They saw a hero, a liberator. But Kratos, staring at his blood-soaked hands, the hands that had brought both destruction and a hollow victory, whispered, his voice raw with the weight of his new reality. I traded one cage for another. The chains of Ares were gone, but he was now bound by a different kind of burden, a different kind of servitude. The end credits rolled on the first God of War game, but the saga, the true tragic saga of Kratos, had just begun. This was not an ending. It was merely a new, darker beginning. Okay, deep breaths, everyone. If you felt every swing of those chain blades hit harder than your morning coffee, if you were on the edge of your seat through that entire epic takedown, then you know what to do. Smash that like button so hard, make YouTube feel it reverberating through its algorithm. Let's show them the raw power of Kratos' story. But hey, the pantheon is vast, and the myths are endless, aren't they? Do you want more god-slaying timelines? More epic mythological beatdowns unpacked with this much detail and intensity? Then don't just sit there. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing legion of myth-hungry warriors. And while you're at it, tell me, seriously, which mythological beatdown do you want us to dive into next? Thor versus Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent, a clash of Norse titans? Or perhaps a deeper look into Kratos versus fate itself, a battle he'd waged for countless years? Drop your suggestions, your wildest mythological dreams, in the comments below, and let's keep the pantheon trembling. Your voice matters, so let it be heard. So, we've walked through it, step by agonizing step. Kratos' takedown of Ares. And let's be honest, it's more than just a cool boss fight, isn't it? It's not just another video game enemy defeated. This is the blueprint, the foundational text for almost every compelling revenge story that followed in gaming, and frankly, in many other forms of media. Think about it. A mortal manipulated and broken beyond recognition. A family brutally sacrificed on the altar of divine cruelty. A weapon hidden away, shrouded in myth, the only key to evening the cosmic scales. A harrowing climb from the depths of hell itself, defying death and destiny. And finally, a confrontation, raw and brutal, that doesn't just end a life, but utterly flips the cosmic order on its head. It's got all the ingredients, but it's the execution, the sheer, visceral emotion that makes it resonate so deeply. But here's the truly brilliant, truly devastating twist. The part that elevates this story beyond mere spectacle. Victory didn't heal him. It didn't bring him peace. It didn't wash away the ash or erase the screams. Instead, it crowned him. It forced him onto the throne of the very thing he hated most, the very title he despised. He became the god of war. That bitter aftertaste, that profound, tragic irony, is precisely why we still talk about this moment, still dissect its implications, nearly 2 decades later. It's not a story about triumph. It's a story about the devastating cost of vengeance. The ghost became a god, yes, but that god became a cautionary tale, a living embodiment of the truth that sometimes the greatest victory can be the most crushing defeat. This tale, carved into the pillars of gaming history, serves as a stark warning. When you set out to kill a god, when you dedicate your very soul to vengeance, make absolutely sure you aren't forging your own throne out of the rubble, a new cage constructed from the very chains you sought to break. Because sometimes, the monster you slay is just replaced by the monster you become.